Hi, Greg Rimke here. This is part two of a presentation for the WHO 2020 motion that people should donate uh, the majority of their disposable income after their basic needs have been met. And I distinguish between sort of emergency donations and general donations. And, if there's earthquake, typhoons, other disasters, you donate through various agencies to try and help those people that are hurt. Donate in your community to people who you have sort of firsthand knowledge or through institutions that you trust that need help. And that seems to be a plausible or an important part of our civic duty. How much you donate, of course, that's part of the resolution. The negatives could say, yes, we should donate, but not the majority, 10%, 20%. But here, my background is in economics and development economics, and I want to come at the sort of separate related issue here that donations are what are needed to help people in the developing world survive, like donations to Africa or in India. So let's talk about that. This is part of that. And also in communities. Is charity the best way to help people that are in need? Well, it depends on how effective the charity is, but there's a separate historical set of institutions to help those who need help. Churches, of course, voluntary institutions in your community, but also a separate way, which were mutual aid societies, associations that mutual insurance organizations where people were a part of and gained other benefits from, as well as the benefits that came in time of need. So let's talk about that a bit. And I'll try and move through this quickly. So we had a debate topic some years ago in the US calling for improving social services for the poor. And this was mainly an effort in the NSDA public school topic to help improve welfare programs or social services for the poor. And so we have a study guide on this. We have a link to it should be a link to it in the comments. Basically an 8-page study guide looking at different aspects of the topic. And what I led with, referencing a book by David Beto on the mutual aid societies. His book was Before the Welfare State, and it focused on how mutual aid societies were the core of helping people help themselves in the United States and in England before the welfare states came, in the 1900s. So more detail on that and how those worked. Remember, society was much poorer then, but that's where most Americans got their health insurance. Most people got their job insurance was from the club or association or fraternal society that they were a member of. So again, the history is valuable. Separately, we had other topics on foreign aid. And here again, helping the poor in the developing world, there are alternatives to foreign aid programs that you might donate to or the European Union or the US might support. So this looks at some of the debate between Jeffrey Sachs and William Easterly that I referenced in the last session, but also more recently the work by Esther Dufalo, co-won the Nobel Prize, her book Poor Economics, on trying to do studies of what is effective for the poor. Also the critical book on Jeffrey Sachs' work called The Idealist, and Chris Coyne's book, Doing Bad by Doing Good, how various charity programs actually harm the people they're designed to help. Tyranny of Experts is the later book by William Easterly, and this is the flyer from our debate workshops that year. And also I reference Poverty Cure and Poverty Inc., documentaries that look at some of the challenges in the foreign aid world. Okay, so a book I'd recommend on this topic called After the Welfare State is very critical of welfare state programs that are part of the European Union, part of the United States, part of state and country welfare programs, and looks at this in the history, arguing that this was something developed sort of to fight communism at the time, to sort of fasten people from cradle to grave to the welfare state to the state so they wouldn't try to overthrow the state. So this is Otto von Bismarck in his effort to form a way to help everyone, but the challenge is that it created unintended consequences. So one chapter here is on how, Italy had the fastest economic growth in Europe from post-World War II through the 1960s, even faster than West Germany. But then came a welfare state, programs that slowed economic growth and did not achieve what it intended to do. Similar story in Greece. Greece had the fastest growing economy from 1900 to 1960, but then came welfare state programs, pensions, other things that sounded good, had good intentions, but with the regulatory barriers and labor regulations, slowed the progress of the welfare state. I mean, part of this was to fight communism and to, have the government provide services to the poor that would make, overthrowing the government entirely less attractive. But the unintended consequence was to slow growth and to cause a whole range of problems. So again, more in this book, and this used to be online in a PDF. I haven't been able to find it in recent years. The chapters in particular I want to focus on for this donate topic is Evolution of Mutual Aid by David Greene, which looks at the friendly societies in the United Kingdom, and Mutual Aid for Social Welfare, the case of fraternal societies in the United States and how they provided an alternative for low and middle income people so that they could help themselves when, disaster struck or when they lost their jobs or got injured. You didn't need a welfare state because first the churches were providing lots of aid. Church-related charities, the Salvation Army were providing aid. But then there were these mutual aid societies and friendly societies where lower income people were helping themselves and improving themselves through the various organizations. African Americans in America, most got their insurance through their fraternal societies for African Americans. There was, of course, segregation and discrimination at this time, but tremendous economic progress thanks to these organizations. So this is an alternative to donations. It's not saying there shouldn't be donations, but for most people, mutual aid was a better, and insurance were better ways to protect yourself than relying on charity. So this lessens the role of charity in helping people in developed economies, and of course separately is the arguments against foreign aid, or skeptical of foreign aid. So mutual aid societies, self-improvement, friendly societies, fraternal societies, mutual insurance, and associations and clubs. Your debate club, it's not designed to help people in poverty, but it is something that provides a service that doesn't involve a for-profit company or a for-profit insurance company, although it could be for-profit. Okay, so, there's lots to research on this, and I realize you can't spend forever preparing for this resolution, but povertyinc.org, you'll see a trailer, and the documentary is available on Prime and I think Netflix. Skeptical look at foreign aid programs. And I have various books and references on this. Poverty Cure, also from the Acton Institute, looks at different ways to help the poor that involve promoting enterprise rather than aid. And stories there by various entrepreneurs looking at the system, various ways to help in the developing world that don't involve donating. Nothing wrong with donating, but if you want to help the poor, investing and legal reforms probably work better. So again, this comes from debate workshops I did for this topic in the past on economic freedom, development, and foreign aid. So an overview of foreign aid, every topic I would argue is a history topic. This is Fernando de Soto's Mystery of Capital. You can see parts of these chapters. You can read about it on Amazon. Parts of the chapters are at Basic Books as well. The idea here is, why does capital, that is tools, investment, why does that work in the West, in Japan and Western Europe, but not work as well in Africa and other countries? Capitalism triumphs in the West, fails everywhere else. This is a 20-year-old book now, so capitalism market reforms have worked better in much of the world in the 20 years since. Every topic should include debate. Every history class should include debate because history is debatable. This is Robert Laton's book on Resolved that's come out recently. Public Choice and Public Policy, Special Interests, the Founders and Factions. And William Easterly, in his books, focuses on the role of the planners versus the searchers. So the planners of the foreign aid people are trying to figure out how do we promote, let's say, bed nets to poor people in Africa? How do we get them the bed nets they can use to help keep their kids from getting malaria? But in the West, you have the searchers. In developed economies, the searchers, or even in poor economies, these are entrepreneurs trying to solve problems. So Esther Duflo, in their research that won them the Nobel Prize, she and her husband the Nobel Prize, they said, well, we don't know how to distribute bed nets, what the best way. Let's test. So in some places they gave them away, in some places they sold them, in some places they subsidized merchants who were promoting them, and they tried to test which was best at getting bed nets to people who needed them to reduce malaria. And so it's basically humility. We don't know the best way to help the poor. Let's do some tests and find out. This is randomized control trials, so important for developing vaccines and treatments for the coronavirus, but also for helping the poor in the developing world. And William Easterly, says, for the searchers, the entrepreneurs in the West, when each new Harry Potter novel came out, the market economy figured out the best way to get, 5 million copies to the people who bought it in one day. And that didn't involve central plans. That involved a huge distributed network of people who were trying to make money, trying to sell a book at a price to people who wanted it. Shouldn't that market technology be employed to deliver the basic needs to people in the developing world rather than relying on donations and charities? So the searchers versus the planners is the theme William Easterly has in his books. More on why some places are poor. A lot has to do with geography. In Africa, the lack of navigable ports, rivers that work, less coastline compared to Western Europe. That's part of the history of why some places prospered more than others. The issue of demographics, the hugely high birth rate in Africa makes a difference compared to Western Europe and other places. For more on this, for Africa Economic Development's George Aite has got a TED video, Africa's Cheetahs versus Hippos, and this is similar to planners versus searchers. The cheetahs, the people moving fast, people that are trying to solve problems with new companies, versus the hippos, which is his derogatory term for the government officials, the presidents and prime ministers who stay on for decades, the government officials who are managing the political system, but maybe not so good in delivering goods and services to those in need, the basic needs that people in Africa, India, and the developing world require. So cheetahs versus hippos. And there's other videos as well, aid versus trade, patient capitalism, aid to Africa. You can look at TED. And you could argue that, hey, aid works, we just need to do it better. This is Jeffrey Sachs' view, and others that are skeptical. And even if you're having capital, what's the best way? Is it at microloans, micro-lending maybe, that the Grameen Bank proposes, or at medium-sized enterprises, or foreign investment, or charter cities? Many ways to help the poor. That's part of the ongoing debate about development economics. So I'm, by the way, the with author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Global Economics. That's me in the tiny print on the bottom. We have articles on this on our economicthinking.org website. Referencing past materials, again, Poverty Cure and Poverty Inc. on this topic. And also Marginal Revolution University. This is part of George Mason University. Tyler Cowen and Alex Tabarak have a whole series of sort of free courses you can take that are, talking heads, but they're quality presentations with the latest journal issues there's the link there. You can find it online, and you could go to their course on development economics and go through the different chapters, the different arguments, the different research, and they update this. This is tied to their textbook, but it's available at no charge as well. And there's the different chapters that you go through. So if you're focusing on how, you should donate the most of your income, disposable income, to help the poor, at least in terms of the developing world, the argument here is maybe better to understand development economics and have a better sense of where your donation dollar or investment dollars should go. Maybe your donation should go to an investment fund that invests in enterprises in the developing world and then rolls over the income. So different ways, micro-lending, microcredit, an alternative to just a charity. And again, charities are effective, especially in times of emergency, but more to learn on this topic. Yes, we've seen this before. So again, in conclusion, lots to look at in this topic. I hope this has been helpful in finding ways to provide social services through mutual aid in your community, in your country, as well as development economics, ways to help the poor develop by understanding some of the challenges of supporting alternative institutions, promoting reform in the developing world. Thank you very much. If you have questions, send me an email. Good luck on your debates. Thanks.